Okay, for real though.
Yeah.
It's not like a big deal or anything.
Two elves sat on the back of the caravan, watching the road. Babies, really, in the eyes of other elves at least. Barely 15. The driver only promised to take them 2 towns up from New Elfington, as long as they used their night vision to watch for bandits. They seemed desperate, sputtering something about running away from an uncle. One elf had a stick, twirling it towards a stone, melting it into the shape of an icosahedron, the same shape as a small clay statue in his lap. In front of him were a few other stones, some natural and some transmuted. The second elf took the stones in her hands, running fingers along their edges.
It is! Come on! Where did you learn this?
When we snuck into the library, I found it in a spell book. I think it's called Stone Shape.
The boy took up another stone, made some adjustments to his clay shape, and transmuted the stone into another icosahedron.
It only needed a little clay as a component, so it seemed easy enough.
Isn't that a 4th level spell?
The girl wrote some numbers on the icosahedrons, making them into a dice set.
Hey, think you could weight this die? We could pull some gambles with it.
Oh, hell yeah, let me get on that.
The boy said, scrambling to readjust the clay again. He carved numbers into the faces, 1 through 20, before turning another stone into the shape. The girl rolled the dice, and sure enough, it landed on a 1. She kept rolling, and it didn't always land on a 1, but it consistently rolled lower numbers. Sweet. The girl turned the new weighted dice in her hands, watching her brother work.
Do you think we could go to school?
Don't have the money for that.
Guess you're right.
The girl looked towards the driver, swiping a few things from the back of the caravan when he wasn't looking. She kept talking to hide the theft.
You're doing fine enough practicing on your own. Could use this gambling money to buy a few books, though. Get some for me, too. Magic's too boss to pass up, right?
The boy frowned.
We need food more, dumbass.
The girl stuck out her tongue, mocking him.
Can't you just wave your wand and make food?
He stopped casting, cogs turning in his head.
You know, I have no idea.
The two were dropped off 2 cities over, and the idea of school and spells left their heads. Surviving was more important, but the idea of being a wizard sizzled in the back of the boy's mind for years. It was a fantasy he would think about when he took the night watch while his sister was meditating. Maybe in another world, if he had an adult in his life that wasn't horrible, he would have been able to study magic earlier. It would be years until the twins held any form of stability, and years after that until they started studying magic in earnest. For the time in between, he settled his itch to do magic by using what he knew to gamble and steal food and money for his sister. At least the dice worked.
I think that's just Angus. That's you.
That me?
That's you. It's a little perfect boy.
A little perfect boy. I don't know. I just sort of did it during self-practice yesterday.
Angus, leaning his cheek into his hand out of boredom, had his wand pointed toward a specific point in the air. Taako watched the point closely after casting, true sight on himself. Sure enough, there was an invisible magic eye floating in the air where Angus held his wand.
You don't just sort of cast a 4th level spell, Angus.
Fine. I found it in one of the books from the Star Blazer.
Angus flicked the wand to the side, sending the eye about 10 feet to the right. He smiled up at Taako, shrugging.
I thought it was cool and I tried it out.
Arcane Eye, 4th level divination spell. It was nice to see Angus actively seek out spells he wanted to learn, instead of just picking from Tako's spell list. Kind of a big deal. This marked self-interest in a specific school of magic, and from how easily Angus picked it up, he could have a good future in divination. But it definitely wasn't Tako's specialty.
You're going to have to go to, like, an actual fucking school soon.
You really think so?
Angus's eyes lit up.
If you actually want to pursue this,
Taako tousled Angus's hair.
you'd have more options with formal education than just being taught by little old me.
Even if you're the most famous wizard in the universe?
You can't stay in Taco's shadow forever, my boy.
Taako adjusted his hat, attention focused on Angus's arcane eye.
Would that be something you're interested in? School, I mean.
Of course. It's been a dream of mine lately.
He smiled, but after a minute of thinking, he frowned.
but I do have a pretty good career as a detective, so, I don't know how that would go. I shouldn't throw that all away for magic.
You're allowed to change your mind of what you want to do with your life, Angus. Fuck, you're only 11.
Angus fell silent for a moment.
Do you really think I could?
Do you want to?
Yes!
Can you put in the work?
Yes, sir!
Taako grinned, hugging Angus tight.
Then yeah, it's not even a problem.
The door cracked open, Magnus filling the space in between the door and the frame.
Hey, Mr. McElroy's on his way. I gotta stay in the room now.
He walked in, sitting across from Angus and Taako as they finished the lesson.
No problem, boy's just showing off at this point.
Taako loosened his grip on Angus, but kept him close. He touched Magnus in between the eyes, casting true sight on him so he could watch Angus's eye too.
Makes sense, he's... Wait,
I think that's
I
Taako.
think that's Taako.
It is.
Makes sense, he's taking to this quicker than I thought. No harm in a little bit of bragging.
Magnus found the eye, watching it as Angus flicked it around the room. He chased it like a cat after a laser pointer.
You got talent, Angus. It's not talent, it's hard work. Fuck, Magnus, you lived with 5 wizards for 100 years. You should have picked that one up.
Taako grimaced, a memory bubbling up to the surface of his mind. It left quickly enough.
Angus is good at spells because he's a nerd.
Angus smiled, only in the way he did before he decided to sass an adult.
If you're a master at spells, aren't you a bigger nerd, sir?
Shut up, nerd.
Taako pushed the boy away, laughing. 2 elves sat on a caravan, the circumstances for their travel different now. Older now. A few decades past 100. They weren't told to watch the road, but the boy did anyway. The girl took the rare opportunity to be social. There were other guests in the back of the caravan, but they were considerably more well-fed and well-dressed. If they were going to stay with these people for a few days of travel, they might as well get to know the other passengers. The boy did not agree with this sentiment. It was lucky the boy watched the road, because he was able to spot a bandit cart trailing them about 60 feet back. It started to creep closer to their caravan. Without much prompting, his sister sent a flaming bolt of energy towards the cart. The other passengers started dealing blows too, hollering as if it was a fun party activity and not a dangerous road stunt. One of the passengers threw an axe into the road and then complained when nobody levitated it back to him. The boy jumped next to the driver in the seat, speeding up their caravan with magic. The driver watched him out of the corner of their eye, sweating as the vehicle picked up speed. The bandit cart rained arrows on their caravan, ripping holes through the canvas top. One arrow hit a wheel axle, sending the caravan on a wobbly path towards a ditch. In a silent, practiced motion, the boy climbed out of the caravan as it was moving, hooking a leg through the driver's door to keep it steady. He grabbed onto the wobbling wheel, casting a mending spell as arrows whizzed past his ears. One flew right through one of his hoop earrings, and if his sister wasn't preoccupied with lighting up the bandit cart, she would have high-fived him for that. The wheel snapped back into balance once his incantation finished. He pulled his body back up next to the driver, secure in his seat as his sister and the other passengers finished off the cart behind them. Through the mirror, the driver and the elf watched the cart veer off into a ditch, catching flames.
Do you want to be the driver?
Where are you going to do that?
The driver asked, straightening their trajectory.
Self-taught. You learn a lot on the road, my dude.
The elf smiled wide, leaning back into his seat.
Mind telling the interviewers about that for me?
The driver laughed nervously, picking up speed.
I do what I can, but you know these people are very selective with applicants.
I think they need new blood.
His sister popped her head in from the back, pulling her brother back into the passenger space.
Hey, come back here. This lady wants to ask what happened at the front.
She grinned, pointing to a young human woman holding a bag of books. Seated next to her was another young human, built large and tough. Both waved.
This is my brother. Doesn't take well to new people, but, that's his fucking problem.
Shove off, I'm not getting buddy-buddy with the competition.
The elf said, taking a seat next to his sister.
All I did was fix the axle.
The human man's eyes lit up.
You did it while we were moving, though. That's vehicle proficiency.
You and your sister are extremely talented for not being formally trained.
The woman said, cracking open a journal.
Mind if I ask you a few questions?
It wasn't talent. It was stealing books out of public libraries. It was reading during any spare moment, during night watches and meals. It was gambling until they won the money to afford components. It was bribing old wizards in humble towns to teach them how to read incantations. It was failing a complicated spell that took months to gather components for. It was pretending to be a fortune teller, even though his divination skills sucked ass, but it paid for food for that night. It was starving one night, conjuring a feast the next night. It was watching his sister go through schools of magic trying to find the right one, trying her hardest not to waste resources in finding what felt right. It was nursing his sister because she actually accidentally burnt an entire section of skin off her leg. It was staging duels with his sister as a more creative way to panhandle. It was how he bonded with his sister. It took years. Longer than any two people should take to learn magic. If they were humans, they'd be dead long before being able to finish studying. If only they had a teacher.
Nah, I'm good. Gonna catch a nap after all that action.
The caravan sped off on the road. Even though the canvas was worn and torn from the arrow cloud, the design on the outside of the caravan showed through beautifully. A logo with intersecting circles of multiple colors, with the letters IPRE floating in the middle.
I thought that was Magnus. Would you mind telling me why you want to adopt Angus?
After the magic lesson, Mr. McElroy asked to sit alone with Taako. He had asked to do this with all the candidates, but he had a lot of questions since the poisoning. Enough time had passed for Taako to steady himself, but it was clear that a few subjects stayed tender. It was nice. Mr. McElroy didn't push too hard on questions that Taako hesitated on. Maybe Angus asked him not to. Although this was one question Mr. McElroy didn't let up on.
That's... personal? Yes, this is a very personal case.
Mr. McElroy drummed his fingers on his notepad.
The visitation records show that you have requested Angus visit more than the other two candidates combined. Magnus also claimed that you speak to Angus on his stone daily.
Taako shrank in his seat.
Is that not allowed? It's allowed. It's encouraged. It's good for Angus to have positive experiences with the adults in his life.
Mr. McElroy shuffled a few papers around, pulling up Taako's file.
I'm curious as to why. That's all. You're Taako from TV. What's the benefit of you adopting a child?
Taako didn't want to talk about this. Not to anyone, much less a near stranger. But Barry's voice rang at the back of his head, reminding him that he needed to be a little more open if he wanted to win this case. Taako took in a breath.
It's not for me. Oh?
He smiled, leaning forward.
You saw the magic lesson. Angus is...
Taako paused. He had to speak slowly, carefully. This was a chore, bearing out his reasoning in front of someone else. Hopefully, he wouldn't have to do this sort of thing much longer.
He's very good at magic. When he came to the Bureau, he took an interest in it, so I started teaching him. Angus needs different support than a normal kid does, and I don't know how I know what I'm doing, but I think he's doing well. I wouldn't know. Angus seems stressed. Because of the trial, I assume?
It didn't seem like a question, but the way he said it, he sounded like he was asking Taako for an answer.
There are a couple of reasons. Such as... Such as...
He clicked his pen. Taako shook his head. Openness can only go so far at once.
You'll have to ask the boy on that one. Told me a few things in confidence that I can't just blurt out.
Mr. McElroy tilted his head.
You're keeping a secret for Angus? I'd be a shitty teacher if I started gossiping about my student without his knowledge.
Taako noticed the surprised expression on Mr. McElroy's face. Oh, right. Social worker.
I'd be a sucky teacher?
Another statement that demanded... Oh.
You swear around the boy.
Another statement that demanded an answer.
He doesn't like it when adults change their speech around him. It's patronizing and dumb.
Taako picked at the edges of his hat.
Besides, he's a good kid and knows how to speak well. Better off than me. I was swearing off way fucking more than he did when I was 11. Such a long time ago, wasn't that?
Mr. McElroy chuckled.
When you were Angus's age, what was that like?
Taako didn't answer. He was frozen. 11 was the year when he and Lup stayed with their aunt. It was a dimly lit shack on their grandfather's old property, right next to the farm. She was the first relative that believed Lup when she cried over a now dead name. She taught the two how to cook for themselves when she came back late from work. Nothing fancy, but it tasted better than the dirt they had at their cousin's house. She was the only adult that Taako and Lup came to trust, and if their grandfather hadn't taken the two to do hard labor on the farm the next year, and if their aunt wasn't killed by bandits on the way back from a supply run, would their life have gone any different? Would it have been better?
I think that's it for today, Taako.
Mr. McElroy packed his things. It was only then that Taako realized he'd been out of it for a while.
We're going to be starting the next big phase of the investigation soon. When are you available for a meeting next week?
The two hammered out dates and times. Angus and Magnus found their way into the room at some point, chatting up a still foggy Taako. He didn't respond much, and he didn't know what to say. It was obvious that everyone in the room left him alone after getting the information they needed. He stood in the room, alone. It felt like his feelings were bubbling over, like a boiling pot every single day now. It was only a matter of time before something spilled over or burst, and Taako was not super excited to do that in front of everybody. Damn, he really had to get his act together. Or, at the very least, he really needed Lup to come back into her body.
Sad Taako.
Yeah.
We get some sad Taako backstory and history.
Hmm.